I caught my wife cheating under a bridge because a homeless man handed me the proof. Seattle rain has a way of hiding things. It washes neon reflections into the black water, muffles footsteps, swallows secrets whole. My wife, Claire, always said she loved the city most at night, the hum of cafes, the laughter spilling from crowded bars, the glow of ferries cutting through the sound. She called it a city of stories. And for years, I believed she was writing ours alongside me. But stories have shadows. And one night, in the middle of a storm, I followed those shadows straight to the truth. Before I go any further, if you're listening to this, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. Because once you've heard how this all unfolded, you'll never look at love or loyalty the same way again. It started small. Subtle shifts. Claire working late at her studio more often. Coming home after midnight, hair damp from rain, smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. Not the lavender scent that sat on our bathroom shelf, but something stronger, sharper, like firewood and citrus. At first, I brushed it off. Clients, late-night editing sessions, the unpredictability of running your own business. But the unease grew. Every time she slipped into bed beside me, I could feel the weight of a lie pressing down on my chest. That night, I told her I had extra work at the firm. In reality, I pulled on my jacket, walked the wet streets she claimed to love so much, and traced the path she always took. Past the espresso bars, down the slick cobblestones, toward the iron arch of the old Fremont Bridge. The city felt hollow, like every sound was a warning. And there, in the dripping dark beneath the bridge, I saw them. Two figures, bodies close enough that the rain barely touched the space between them. Claire, and a man in a long, dark coat. His hand cupped her face, brushing away wet strands of her hair with an intimacy I hadn't felt from her in years. She tilted her head into his palm, smiling softly, the kind of smile I thought was mine alone. I froze. My stomach turned to ice while the rest of the world blurred into gray. The traffic above, the echo of water lapping against steel, the storm hammering down, it all disappeared. All I could hear was her laugh. A laugh that used to belong to me. I should have stormed up, ripped her hand out of his, demanded an answer. But my legs refused to move. I backed away, silent, my shoes slipping on the wet pavement. That's when I nearly stumbled over him. An old man sat tucked in the shadows, wrapped in a plaid blanket, eyes glassy but sharp. A homeless man. His presence startled me more than the rain. He looked at me with something I didn't expect. Recognition. Not the first time, he muttered, his voice gravelly, worn by cigarettes or the cold. I've seen them here before. You're her husband, right? The words hit me harder than the storm. Confirmation. A stranger, someone who had nothing to gain, had just stripped away my last ounce of denial. He shifted and pulled something from his coat pocket. A battered Polaroid. People don't notice me here, he said quietly. But I noticed them. I figured you'd come looking one day. So I kept this. He handed me the photograph. The image was grainy, but there was no mistaking it. Claire, my wife, in another man's arms. Her face lit with a joy I hadn't seen in years. People lose their homes in different ways, he sighed. Yours wasn't built of walls. Yours was in your heart. I didn't answer. Couldn't. I just stood there, holding the proof. While the rain bled the city's lights into the river below. By the time I made it home, Claire was already there, towel drying her hair, humming like nothing had happened. She kissed me lightly on the cheek, told me it had been a long shoot, and slipped into bed. I lay awake beside her, the Polaroid burning a hole in my pocket. And for the first time in years, I didn't recognize the woman sleeping next to me. Silence isn't weakness. It's a tool. After the night under the bridge, I woke up beside Claire and said nothing. I brewed coffee, packed my lunch, and left for work like any other Tuesday. My heart felt like it had been sanded down to bone, but my face didn't show it. Engineers solve problems by isolating variables and testing assumptions. So I became my own quiet lab. I started with the easy places, paper trails we'd both agreed to share when we got married. Our joint bank app showed a string of charges that looked harmless until the pattern snapped into focus. The Hillside Bar and Grill, 2 entrees, a bottle of wine. 12 minutes later, a rideshare from a block away. Same pattern on 3 different Thursdays. A florist receipt with no delivery address. A boutique hotel charge, curiously the exact price of a studio day pass. the kind she could plausibly justify as a location rental. I saved PDFs to a thumb drive, labeled with dates and times like I was cataloging fossils of something still alive that I'd home. I watched her behavior with fresh calibration. Claire moved carefully, as if she knew our floorboards squeaked in certain spots and wanted to avoid them. She replied to her messages face down, her thumb moving faster than her eyes. She started dressing as if the city itself were a runway. Sharp lines, dark lipstick she never wore around me. When she caught me looking, she smiled and asked what I thought. "It's new," I said. It was the safest true sentence I could find that I didn't tail her like a movie detective. That's not my style, and honestly, I was afraid of what I'd see. Instead, I checked what was fair and legal, the shared calendar she forgot to update, the studio's online booking page where her name appeared next to private sessions, under an alias she sometimes used for brand shoots. I screenshotted, archived, and kept my mouth shut. Every click felt like peeling paint off a wall I'd once called home. That weekend, Claire suggested a date night. Tacos by the water, then a walk. She was bright, almost giddy, and held my arm just a little too carefully, as if she were placing it somewhere it didn't belong. She told a story about a difficult client who kept changing the brief, and I pretended to laugh at the right places. When we passed the bridge, she glanced at it a second too long. My pulse thudded in my ears, but my face stayed neutral. I learned I could lie by omission too. On Sunday morning, I went back to the bridge. The rain had thinned to a mist that turned the river silver. I found the old man sitting on a bench of chilled concrete, wrapped in the same plaid blanket, a paper cup steaming between his hands. "You came," he said. "I did." He nodded toward the water. "Name's Rudy." Up close, Rudy's eyes had the color of tide-worn glass, faded, but still catching light. I offered to buy him breakfast. He looked me over like he was measuring the offer, not the food. "Eggs, if they're hot." I brought back a takeout box and coffee that could melt frost. He ate slow, careful, like each bite had to pass some internal inspection. "I didn't want to believe you," I told him. "People rarely do," Rudy said. "Until they have to." He didn't gloat, didn't fish for money, didn't ask for my story. He just sat with me until the silence felt like a third person who knew both our names. After a while, he tapped the pocket where a camera used to be. "What I gave you. Not the only one," he said. "They've been meeting here a while. Rain keeps their voices close. Lights make them think they're alone." "How long?" I asked. Rudy looked at the bridge beams above us, counting something only he could see. "Long enough for the city to change its bulbs twice. Months, at least. Maybe more." I felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. "Why keep the photo?" He shrugged, a soft motion under rough fabric. "People like me, we notice what others throw away. Sometimes that's a can. Sometimes it's a promise." We watched a ferry cut a low white line through the sound. The world kept moving like it hadn't been told my life was tilting. Rudy finished his eggs and set the box aside with a neatness that made me ashamed of every time I'd walked past someone like him without a glance. "You gonna blow up?" he asked, as if it were a weather question. "No," I said. "I'm going to build." That afternoon, I tested the framework. I told Claire I was heading to the office to prep a bid review. I took my laptop to a cafe 2 blocks from her studio and logged into our family cloud. The automatic sync I'd set up a year ago, back when we were both losing photos to dead phones, still worked. Most folders were empty, but her workflow folder wasn't. It held contact sheets, mood boards, and a few test images from sessions she'd labeled urban portraits. Faces blurred, angles artful, but the coat, the long, dark coat, kept threading through the frames like a signature. My chest tightened. I closed the laptop and stared at my reflection in the window, a man who knew too much to keep living the same way. Claire texted a heart and a "don't be late." I typed back, "won't." When she came home, she brought Chinese takeout and played our favorite playlist like it could rewind time. She leaned in for a kiss that tasted like sweet chili and something distant. I kissed her back, memorizing the shape of her lie. That night, she turned toward me in bed, her fingers tracing patterns on my shoulder like a habit she was trying to remember. I let my breathing stay steady. She fell asleep. I didn't. I lay there and counted the seconds between each streetlight shadow drifting across the ceiling until the room dawned gray. By Monday, the plan was simple. Collect, don't confront. Verify, don't accuse. I photographed the wardrobe changes she left on the chair, lipstick shades, fragrances, a scarf that smelled like a bar I hadn't been to in years. I matched timestamps to rideshare receipts. I noted when her phone lived face down and when it vanished to charge in the studio bathroom during our dinners. I didn't judge those details. I just wrote them down. That evening, I went back to the bridge one more time. Rudy was there, sipping something that looked like tea. "You look taller," he said. "I'm standing up." I answered. He smiled at the water. "Good. Standing's a start." On my walk home, I realized the silence wasn't an absence anymore. It was a scaffold, and I was finally ready to climb. Engineers don't argue with gravity. We measure it. After a week of silence and quiet collecting, I turned my dining table into a command center. Laptop open, legal pad squared to the edge, pins lined like rebar. If my marriage had cracks, I was going to map every hairline fracture and date stamp each one. First, a timeline. I plotted Claire's late studio nights against our joint bank charges and her rideshare receipts. Thursday patterns jumped out like hazard stripes. Boutique hotel day pass, florist, bar near the waterfront, rideshare pinged back to the studio. I added weather records. Seattle loves its rain because the bridge always came up on wet nights. Then I layered my own location data to prove I wasn't anywhere near those places when it mattered. Every cell was a rivet. Every rivet would have to hold. Next, metadata. The cloud sync I'd rediscovered in the cafe had tucked away more than images. Test shots from her urban portraits folder carried EXIF data, time, lens, even GPS for the few she'd forgotten to scrub. The long, dark coat threaded through frames taken within minutes of the same Thursdays on my spreadsheet. No faces, nothing defamatory. Just angles, hands, and a presence that repeated like an equation with one unknown. I archived everything twice. One copy to an encrypted drive, another to a locked folder in a separate account with a recovery email Claire didn't know existed. But evidence means nothing if gathered the wrong way. So I booked a consultation with a discreet attorney downtown. The office looked like it had been designed to lower blood pressure. Warm wood, quiet carpet, a view of Elliott Bay pretending life was simple. She shook my hand, listened without interruption, then started circling variables. "Stay ethical," she said. "No breaking into devices, no guessing passwords, no trackers on her car. Use what you already have legal access to, joint accounts, shared calendars, publicly visible pages, anything she's synced with your consent. Preserve it, don't edit it, and keep a contemporaneous log. If this goes to mediation or court, documentation beats drama." I told her about Rudy, the photo, the evenings under the bridge. She noted it down, then tapped her pen on the pad. "Two more things," she said. "One, if marital funds finance the affair, hotels, gifts, that's relevant as marital waste. Two, do you have a prenup?" We did. A modest one, mostly about the house and my retirement, drafted back when love felt immune to corrosion. She asked me to email a copy. "Don't confront yet," she added. "The moment you do, evidence tends to disappear. And if you're worried about safety, yours or hers, tell me now." "I'm not," I said, and realized I sounded tired instead of tough. "Then your job is boring," she said, almost smiling. "Boring wins. Keep your records. Keep living your life. When you're ready, we file." Back home, I made boring a ritual. Each evening, I logged timestamps like a field engineer. 6:12 p.m., Claire takes a call in the hallway, claims it's a client. 6:29 p.m., rideshare scheduled. 7:03 p.m., private session, on studio calendar pops up with an alias. I took photos of receipts when she left them in the trash, only ones from joint accounts. I printed my log, signed and dated each page. If anyone later asked why I didn't blow up, I wanted a stack of paper that answered for me. Midweek, the plan almost snapped. Claire came into the dining room while I was annotating a rideshare charge. I palmed the printout and slid it under the legal pad. She tilted her head. "Working from home?" "Bid estimates," I said. "That why we're eating on the couch?" She smiled like we were still us. I nodded, and she leaned down to kiss the top of my head. "Don't stay up too late." Her perfume lingered after she left, smoke and citrus, and I waited until the scent thinned before I breathed normally. That night, I opened the prenup. Paragraphs I barely remembered now felt like airbag instructions you pray you never need. The language was clean, If either party dissipated marital assets on an affair, credits could be applied in division. Not revenge, math. I scanned it and sent a copy to the attorney with a simple subject line. Per our meeting. She replied inside 10 minutes with a thumbs up emoji and 3 bullet points. Maintain backups. No confrontation. Consider a separate mailing address for legal correspondence. I rented a small box near the post office the next morning. The last piece was my own house in order. I redirected my paycheck to an account in my name only. Legal, as long as I continued paying our usual bills. Then froze the joint credit limit so new debt couldn't bloom without both signatures. I updated my beneficiaries, inventoried the safe, and wrote a list titled Things I Keep If the Roof Comes Off. The list was shorter than I expected. On Friday, Claire floated in wearing a dress I'd never seen, sleek. City dark, the kind that lives in low light. Gallery scouting, she said, grabbing a camera bag. Don't wait up. She kissed me quickly and left a comet trail of that same perfume that I stood in the doorway and watched the hall go quiet. Then I turned back to my table, the spreadsheet grids, the logs, the calm little mountain of paper that said I wasn't crazy. I wasn't impulsive. I was prepared. Outside, rain started again, fine as thread. Under bridges, secrets like to whisper. I wasn't chasing whispers anymore. I was building the exit. Studios always smell like fresh paint and ambition. Claire's smelled like both, plus a new perfume that didn't live in our bathroom. The bell over the door chimed when I stepped in, and a wall of framed prints watched me like witnesses who'd already made up their minds. Danny? Her voice floated in from the shooting bay, cheerful, surprised, a little breathless. I wasn't expecting you. I brought lunch, I said, lifting a paper bag like a peace flag. Engineers don't poke a fault line. We weigh it, log it, then step lightly. She appeared in the doorway with a camera strap across her shoulder, hair twisted up with a pencil, black jumpsuit dusted with flower-white specks of gaffer tape. She looked like the artist she'd always wanted to be. Effortless, precise, untouchable. You're sweet, she said, kissing my cheek. Can you give me 10? I'm mid-session. Behind her, a softbox glowed. A young couple stood near the backdrop, hands linked the way people do when they're nervous, knuckles white, smiles too practiced. On a rack beside them hung wardrobe options, denim jackets, a sequin dress, and a long, dark overcoat that tugged at something in me like a loose thread. I set the food on a side table, pretending not to notice. Claire turned back to her clients. Okay, chin down, breathe out. Beautiful. Shutter clicks stitched the room into moments. I drifted through her space like an inspector who didn't want to be seen inspecting, noting her wall calendar, 3 private sessions this month under her brand alias. Her corkboard, call sheets from waterfront locations, and a neat stack of invoices on the printer with my last name on the business credit line. When the couple left, teary and grateful, the way people get when a lens flatters them, Claire dimmed the key light. Saved you the good sandwich, I said, handing her the one without onions because I know her tells. You're a saint. She perched on a stool and bit in. What are you doing here in the middle of the day? Bid review pushed. Thought I'd see your kingdom. She smiled, softened. You always make it sound bigger than it is. I glanced around at the frames, the tripods, the drawer units labeled with a soldier's clarity. It was big enough to hide a life. You ever had trouble with that bank card? I asked it lightly, opening the door I needed without kicking it in. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Why? Statement was weird. Couple charges looked like. Location rentals? Didn't see the receipts come through. Her eyes flicked toward the printer before she caught herself. Oh yeah? I'm behind on filing. I'll sort it tonight. Mind if I help? Tax season's a misery alone. Let me. I have a system. The smile was there, but her shoulders had set like concrete. I nodded, like I'd been reassured. Then I followed the thread that wanted pulling. By the way, who's E-Hart? I asked, lifting a postcard from a neat stack on the desk. Hart Design Studio, Waterfront Installations, Architectural Light. She took a beat too long. A contact. He. Consults on lighting when clients want something. Edgy. Architect. Something like that. A swallow. Ease. Particular. So are you. I said, and let it hang there between us like a cable no one wanted to test for load. She hopped off the stool. I've got another session at 4. Families. Sticky fingers. You may want to bail before the sugar hits. I'll get out of your way. I stood. Totally, I said, Just need them for the file. I smiled like it cost nothing. You know how I am. Meticulous, she said. It sounded like a compliment and an accusation. On my way out, the bell chimed again. A woman in a blazer entered, all straight lines and brisk purpose. Claire? I'm Sophia from Lumen Gallery. We've been emailing. Claire brightened, genuinely. Of course. Sorry, early. Sophia's gaze flicked over me, took my measure, and set me aside like furniture. We're curating a spring show centered on urban shadows and truth. Your night work is compelling. She lowered her voice, failingly discreet. Our board likes the anonymity. Faces obscured. Stories implied. Very current. A pulse beat in my throat. Urban shadows. Truth. I glanced at the framed series along the side wall. Backlit silhouettes near rails, reflections in puddles, bare hands on steel. The images were artful, legal, deniable, and my wife knew exactly how to make a ghost look beautiful. Could we talk? Sophia asked. About a feature, maybe even a small installation? Claire shot me a quick look. Permission? Warning? Let me finish this chat, and I'll be right with you. Please, I said, already backing away. Don't let me interrupt. Outside, the rain had turned to a mist that sat on my jacket like second thoughts. I crossed the street to a cafe, chose a table with a view of her windows, and opened my laptop. The cloud sync tugged the newest contents of her workflow folder down to my drive. Mood boards labeled Underpass, Harborline, Blue Hour. The metadata stamped them to the Thursdays I'd circled. In one composite, a coat's edge entered frame, dark, heavy, familiar as a bruise. No faces. Nothing for a lawyer to point at. But patterns don't need faces to testify. I emailed myself a summary. Dates, charge amounts, captions used in social posts, the gallery's name. I added a note about Heart, architectural light, then searched. His website loaded like a confession, waterfront installations, a bridge relighting proposal, a bio photo cropped just shy of familiarity. No proof. Only a shape that fit the hole in my life too perfectly. Back at the studio door, I listened for a minute that stretched long. Claire and Sophia spoke in low, excited tones punctuated by names of sponsors and phrases like controlled narrative and no direct identifiers. Money rustled in those words. So did opportunity. So did a rope I might learn to pull. I didn't go in. I texted Claire instead. Grab dinner after? She replied fast. Late. Rain check? Across the hall, an older man from the framing shop shuffled past me with a box. You're Claire's? He asked, not unkindly. Husband, I said. She's got an eye, he said, tapping the box. Night stuff's going to stir folks up. City doesn't like seeing itself in black and white. Does anyone? I asked. He chuckled and headed down the stairs. I returned to the cafe and called a vendor we both used, the hotel Claire favored for studio alternates. I kept my voice friendly, forgettable. Hi, this is Daniel Walker from Walker Structural. My wife, Claire Walker, books day passes through you for shoots. Could you resend January, March receipts to my email on file? We had an archive glitch. Phones, I've learned, will give you what open doors won't. After a short hold, the receipts landed in my inbox. The descriptions were vague but identical. The times coincided with her calendar. The card, our joint business account. The cost, not enough to scream, just enough to sting, multiplied by repetition. Before I left, I walked one more loop around the block, letting the rain work its old tricks. Seattle is kind to liars and engineers. It hides what should be seen and reveals what must be proved. A delivery van pulled up to Claire's building. The driver wrestled a garment box to the door. The sticker read, "Return to Heart Design Studio." My stomach went very still. I signed for it. Neighbors do that here, then carried it inside. Claire met me in the foyer, surprise flaring, then smoothing. You didn't have to, just passing, I said, handing her the box. From Hart. He must keep you busy. She hugged it close, casual as a shield. He's demanding, but it could be big. For who? I asked gently. You? Him? The city? Maybe all three, she said, and for a second I saw the woman I'd fallen for. Fierce, hungry, certain the world could be bent toward beauty. I'll get out of your hair, I said. Text if you need me to move the car. Thank you, she said, relief threaded through the gratitude. On the sidewalk, I opened a new note in my log. Heart equals supply chain. Gallery equals stage. Hotel equals spend. Studio equals narrative. I looked back at the window where a long coat hung in profile like a question I already knew the answer to. I didn't plan to blow up her show. I had something cleaner in mind. If Claire wanted to curate shadows, I would curate light. And when the opening came, every bulb would be exactly where I wanted it. Seattle's skyline has always been my compass. Each tower a column, each bridge a calculation. But by the time spring came, the city looked different. Every lit window felt like a secret someone else was keeping. And in the middle of it, Claire was building a stage where shadows could pretend to be art. The gallery invitation arrived in cream cardstock with her name in serif gold. Claire Walker, Urban Truths. I held it long enough for the edges to dampen in my hand. The opening was 3 weeks away. Enough time for an engineer to draft a demolition that didn't raise dust. I began with the simple rule: don't shout, don't accuse, don't storm, build. So I mapped out 3 layers: financial, narrative, and personal, financial. I traced every joint expense Claire had run through the business card: hotel day passes, restaurant bills, studio supplies delivered from Heart Design. Each went into a ledger, color-coded. My attorney confirmed: marital waste. Not drama. Numbers, narrative. I created a private folder titled Bridge. Inside, I cataloged screenshots of her mood boards, images from her workflow cloud, and cross-references to bank charges. No faces, but repetition is a kind of confession. Every Thursday, every rainy night, every coat, sleeve entering frame. Personal. This was trickier. A marriage is more than receipts. So I began documenting my evenings, my meals alone, the empty passenger seat, the calls unanswered. Photos of takeout cartons with timestamps, playlists played on loop in my car while she texted, working late. I wasn't archiving my pain. I was archiving absence, the negative space she left behind. One evening, I visited Rudy again under the bridge. He looked thinner, the plaid blanket fraying at the corners. I handed him a hot sandwich. "You're steady," he said, chewing slow. "Most men break by now. Engineers don't break," I told him. "We reinforce." He chuckled, coughed, then fixed me with those sea glass eyes. "Just don't reinforce the wrong beam. Bridges fall when you brace the rotten part instead of replacing it." His words sat with me. I realized my plan wasn't about saving what was left. It was about designing the exit so clean it looked like destiny. Claire, meanwhile, glowed. She came home humming, her skin lit with the buzz of opportunity. She talked about gallery layouts, sponsored dinners, and Sophia's compliments. She never mentioned Hart directly, but his fingerprints smudged every detail: installation light, structural ambience, architectural synergy. Words that tasted like him. Not her point. One night, she caught me looking at the invitation on the counter. "Nervous?" she asked, pouring wine. "Proud." I lied. She smiled, pressed the glass into my hand, and toasted to shadows finding their place. I clinked, sipped, and logged the moment later in my notebook. The next step was quiet infiltration. I offered to help with installation prep, leaning on my background in structures. Lighting rigs, load calculations. "Let me take some stress off you." Claire hesitated, then agreed. She wanted the show perfect. She couldn't risk a collapse, literal or metaphorical. The gallery space. A raw brick hall smelling of sawdust. I took measurements, checked joists, and smiled at Sophia's sharp nods. Claire floated, radiant, pointing at walls, adjusting mock-ups. And in the corner, Hart arrived, tall and careful, shaking hands with Sophia like an old ally. His coat hung from his shoulders like a flag of conquest. I didn't flinch. I introduced myself, steady as rebar. "Daniel Walker, structural engineer." "Edward Hart," he replied, grip firm, smile polite. His eyes flicked to Claire with ownership he didn't bother disguising. "Claire's lucky," I said evenly. "She's got quite a team." "She inspires it," he said. And for a second, it was just the 3 of us. A triangle so taut you could hear it hum. I logged everything: his arrival time, his interaction, the way Claire's laugh pitched higher when she stood near him. Numbers don't lie. People do. That night, back home, I spread my notes across the dining table like blueprints. Each receipt, each timestamp, each whispered glance became a load point in a structure I was designing, not of steel, but of consequence. My revenge wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be engineered. And when the gallery opened its doors, I wanted every spotlight aimed so the truth stood naked where shadow. A marriage certificate confirmed it. A charity newsletter gave me a photo. Amelia stood beside him in a navy dress, not flashy, but certain. The kind of certain you only learn by surviving storms. My chest tightened. This wasn't a triangle. It was a bridge with 4 anchor points that I didn't call her. I wrote a short, careful email from a new address with a neutral subject line regarding an installation schedule overlap. Inside, 2 sentences that we might share professional contacts, and I had a question about a calendar clash. If she wanted to talk, she'd reply. If she didn't, I would back off. No bombs. No ambush. She answered that afternoon. Polite. Curious. We set a time. Tuesday, 11 a.m., a quiet cafe 2 neighborhoods from the gallery. I arrived early and chose a table away from the windows. When Amelia walked in, she scanned the room once and came straight to me like someone who follows facts, not hunches. Daniel? She asked that I rose. Thank you for meeting me. Up close, she looked tired in a way makeup doesn't fix. We ordered tea we wouldn't drink. I laid my phone on the table and slid it away from both of us, palms visible, like a ceasefire. I'm not here to hurt you, I said. Or him. Or me. I just need the truth anchored to something solid. She studied my face. I appreciate the manners, Mr. Walker. But let's not waste each other's time. Is my husband having an affair with your wife? I could have curled around a softer answer. I didn't. Yes. Her mouth barely moved, but something in her posture changed. One plank loosening underfoot. How long? Months, at least. Maybe more. I kept my voice level. I'm not guessing. I've been collecting lawful documentation, times, places, expenses from our joint account used to facilitate meetings. She nodded at lawful. I'm a compliance officer, she said. If you start talking about trackers or hacked phones, I walk out. I won't, I said. I haven't. I opened a thin folder. No faces. No ugly screenshots. Just a timeline. Charges, gallery rehearsals, the day pass pattern. I let her read in silence. When she finished, she exhaled like she'd been underwater too long. Edward thinks he's discreet, she said at last. He's compartmentalized. That's the word he uses. A flicker of something like gallows humor crossed her eyes. He tells me it protects me. Compartmentalized things rust from the inside. I said before I could stop myself that a small, almost grateful sound escaped her. Yes. We talked logistics, not vengeance. She had her own records, travel stubs that didn't match project logs, a recurring florist charge he'd labeled as donor relations. She'd suspected, but suspicion is a ghost. It passes through your hands. Now she had metal. What do you want from this? She asked, finally drinking her cold tea. A clean exit, I said. No scenes. No scorched earth. Documentation, mediation, and light. Real light. I told her about the show, the theme, the way Claire and Sophia were framing anonymity as honesty. I'm not sabotaging it, I added, but I will not let it rewrite what happened. Amelia weighed that. I won't blow it up either, she said, but I won't applaud a lie. We exchanged numbers like diplomats. Before she left, she paused. There's a benefit dinner Friday, she said. Edward expects me to attend. If your wife is there, we'll have geometry. Then we plan for angles, I said. You don't need to confront him there. Neither do I. We observe, we note, we preserve. The room will do the rest. She stood, squared her shoulders. Thank you for being decent, she said, as if decency were rarer than evidence. After she left, I remained at the table, letting the hum of the cafe fill the spaces in me that grief had hollowed out. I texted Rudy to check in. No reply, and ordered a sandwich for him anyway, habit turning into ritual. Then I walked to the water and watched a tugboat pull a barge past the bridge where this all began. The sky was the color of steel. My breath fogged and vanished. That night, Claire floated home, hair swept up, phone lighting her face with other people's plans. Sponsorship dinner Friday, she said, dropping her keys. Sophia wants me there early. Black dress? I asked, casual as a couch cushion. She smiled without looking up. You know me. I did. Or I had. I went to the dining table, updated the log, and added a new heading. Intersections. Under it, Friday, 7:30 p.m. Amelia present. Observe. Record. Do not react. Engineers don't pray for collapse. We calculate the moment a bad load reveals itself, and we stand where we need to when it happens. Paper doesn't shout. It outlives shouting. By Tuesday, I had a stack that could stop a door, receipts, screenshots of public calendars, invoices with our joint business line, a tidy spreadsheet that made chaos look organized. I took it to my attorney and watched her lay everything out like an autopsy. Good, she said, tapping columns. Purchases tied to the affair go under marital waste. Keep your log current, sign, and date it nightly. No confrontations, no threats, no surprises. She slid my prenup across the desk and penciled marks in the margins. These clauses matter. If this goes to mediation, you walk in with numbers, not nerves. What about the gallery? I asked. She didn't flinch. You're not there to humiliate her. You're there to be unignorable. Let the record speak. If she wants performance, give her audience, of facts. I left with a folder of instructions and a calm so clinical it felt like Novocaine. On the sidewalk, Seattle exhaled mist. The city didn't care who was right. It cared who was documented. Work became my refuge. A municipal RFP for corridor lighting upgrades had been floating around for months. The winning contractor would relight a chain of underpasses, including the old bridge where my marriage cracked. I put in a bid so clean it squeaked. Energy budgets, glare control, vandal-resistant housings, warm white temperatures that made faces look human, not haunted. I stayed late modeling spill patterns so the river wouldn't look like a spotlighted crime scene. 2 weeks later, the city called. Walker Structural? You're our recommendation, pending council vote. I thanked them, hung up, and sat very still. I wasn't chasing a symbol. I was going to wire the symbol and make it safe. That afternoon, I walked the site with the city inspector, a woman in a hard hat who spoke in exact measurements. We chalked placements along the abutments while commuters drummed overhead. The air smelled like wet iron and old gum. In the shadows, Rudy was exactly where you'd expect Rudy to be, wrapped in that fraying plaid. Union gig? He asked, nodding at my plans. City job, I said. Phase 1 light. Phase 2 outreach. I hesitated. You ever held a broom with a paycheck behind it? He lifted his chin, offended and amused. I held wrenches before you were born. I laughed, because I deserved the jab. Then show up tomorrow. Day labor rate, legit. We'll start with site clean and cable pulls. If it sticks, I'll talk to the foreman about a longer run. Rudy looked at the river like it had finally said something kind. You don't owe me charity. It's not charity, I said. It's alignment. He came at dawn. We cut brush, bagged trash, hauled out a mattress someone had fossilized in mildew. He worked like a man, proving a point to himself. At lunch, he sat on a coil of conduit, eating the sandwich I pressed into his hand without comment. You wiring redemption in with those lights? He asked. Code wouldn't allow it, I said. But I'm sneaking in dignity where I can. Claire texted photos that afternoon, mock-ups of her show. Captions about truth emerging in negative space. I typed back the neutral praise of a civil person and returned to my load calcs. Neutral won the day. That night, Amelia called. I have confirmations on 2 charges labeled donor relations. Same florist you flagged. Times match your Thursdays. Thank you, I said. Friday's dinner still on? Black tie, she said. I bought a dress that doesn't apologize. We agreed again. Observe, record, no fireworks. The room would be full of people who preferred their truths curated. Sometimes the most subversive act is to keep your voice low. Back at the bridge, the work took on a rhythm. Conduit clips against concrete, anchors sunk into masonry, temporary battery packs humming like small hearts. The inspector signed off on the first circuit and raised an eyebrow. Soft edges, she said, surprised. Most crews blast the whole space like a prison yard. Prisons don't make neighbors. I said that we ran a test after dusk. Warm light stitched the underside of the span into a place instead of a rumor. The water caught it and sent it back without making the river look interrogated. Rudy stood inside the circle, face gentled, years falling off like soot. This is different, he said. That's the idea, I answered. Safer, harder for lies to hide, easier for people to be seen without being exposed. On the walk home, I passed a poster for Claire's opening, her name floating above a dim figure near rails. It was beautiful in the way fog is beautiful when you're not trying to drive through it. I didn't rip it down. I didn't even touch it. My hands were full with cleaner work to at my dining table. I updated the ledger, added Amelia's confirmations, printed the city's notice of award, and slid it into a new tab labeled Bridge Contract. I signed my nightly log beneath the date and felt the odd satisfaction of bolts torqued to spec. Before bed, Claire called from the studio. "You'll be at the opening, right?" Her voice was light, but it carried the tiniest tremor, like a cable in wind. "I'll be there," I said. "True. I'm finishing a job nearby." When the line went dead, I looked at the folder on my table and the map of lights I was threading beneath our city. Paper and wire. Math and mercy. The paper trail tightened. The circuits closed, and the dark place where my life had been wounded was, inch by measured inch, becoming impossible to lie in. Black tie events are built like stage sets, velvet, glass, and the quiet choreography of people pretending. Friday's benefit dinner unfurled across a hotel ballroom where the ceiling looked like flipped water, chandeliers rippling in gold. I arrived alone, in a suit that fit like a boundary, and checked my phone once. Intersections. Observe, record, do not react. Amelia appeared at the entrance like a line under a sentence. Navy dress, hair swept back, no jewelry that could be tugged in an argument. She caught my eye and didn't smile. Good. This wasn't a social call. "Evening," she said, "all function." "Geometry night." I answered that we moved separately, docking briefly at assigned tables, logging the room like topography. Sponsors clustered near the step-in repeat. Board members orbiting the bar. A bloom of photographers near the dais where a lectern waited for truths to be curated. I slipped a small notebook into my jacket pocket and let my phone timestamp what my memory didn't need. Arrivals, departures, angles. Claire came in on Edward's arm 5 minutes before the speeches. She wore a black dress cut to disappear into shadow, which is a kind of honesty if you think about it. Sophia greeted them with cheeks-to-air kisses, then steered them toward donors. Claire laughed higher than usual. Edward kept a hand at her back like a claim filed and stamped. Amelia didn't flinch. She stood at the edge of their orbit and watched her husband with the calm of a person who reads footnotes. When Edward finally spotted her, his face arranged itself into surprise he'd rehearsed in a mirror. He crossed the carpet, leaned in to kiss her cheek. She turned just enough that it landed as etiquette instead of affection. "Didn't know you'd make it," he said. "You put me on the seating chart," she replied, soft as lint. Page 2. His eyes flickered. Compartment, meet light, dinner began. A string quartet worked through tasteful hits, while servers staged choreography with plates. The program promised speeches about urban renewal through art and engineering, language that wanted to be me and him at once. I kept my back straight and my face neutral as the MC praised partnerships, named donors, including Heart Design, and teased urban truths as the show that would reveal what cities hide. Claire's knuckles whitened on her water glass, then released. If she felt seen, it wasn't the kind she wanted. During the second course, Amelia moved. Not a scene, an adjustment. She rose from her table and walked to Edwards with the unhurried purpose of someone retrieving a coat. "Could we borrow you a moment?" she asked him, polite enough to be quoted. He followed. Claire watched him go, then glanced at me across the room and found me already looking. We didn't look away. Sometimes permission lives in not blinking. I intercepted them in the corridor outside the ballroom, where the noise thinned to carpeted hush. Amelia took the lead. "Edward," she said, "your donor relations florist bills." She slid a folded page across the console table. "Recurring. Thursdays. Same time the studio alternates on Claire's books were billed. Our accountant says the reclassifications don't pass smell test." Edward laughed the way men laugh when they want to downgrade a problem to a misunderstanding. "Amelia," she didn't raise her voice. "I'm not here to embarrass you. I'm here to confirm I'm not insane." She pointed to the totals. "You can keep your compartments. You cannot make me finance them." He looked to me, as if I were a structure he didn't recognize. "And you are?" "Daniel," I said. "The husband." He glanced at my suit, my posture, the absence of fury. The math didn't add up for him. "You think you're clever, walking around with logs and ledgers." "I don't think I am anything," I said. "I know what time it is." He stepped closer, chin a degree from arrogant. "Try not to confuse your paperwork with reality. Artists don't live by your schedules." "Cities do," I said. "Courts do. And light does. Silence holds a special temperature when it follows truth." We stood in it until Edward's mask reformed. "We'll talk at home," he told Amelia, which meant not here. He turned to go. Amelia's voice caught him by the sleeve without touching him. Also, she said, I'll be at the opening. He stopped. That's not necessary. It is, she answered. For the geometry. Back inside, the auction started. Framed promises of beauty bought by people with portfolios. Claire reappeared at her table, smile lacquered back on. When I passed behind her chair on the way to the bar, she reached for my wrist without looking, a reflex from a life we used to share. You came, she said. I keep my word, I said. Do you? She released me like something hot. You don't understand this world, Danny. I understand loads, I said, and how to carry them. Her mouth opened, shut. She could have accused me of cruelty. She didn't. She turned to Sophia, who had materialized with a donor in tow. The show went on. Amelia and I left a few minutes apart and met under the porte-cochere where cold air stripped the room's perfume out of our clothes. She leaned against a stone pillar and closed her eyes. You did well, I said. Measured beats melodrama. I wanted to throw his name into a drain, she said. Instead, I circled it. Circles hold, I said. We just need 2 more days. Until the opening, she said. Claire introduced the final piece. Shadows Under the Bridge, she said, and the crowd hummed at the title. The image swelled. The bridge belly, the water catching ghost light, 2 figures near the pillar, blurred, anonymous, perfectly legal. The room held its breath the way rooms do when they think they've found art's edge. I keyed the intercom. Now, the house lights rose, not blasting, not cruel, just honest. Not white like interrogation, but warm like morning. The projected shadows met the new light and changed. Patterns appeared that weren't visible before. Safety tape I'd placed earlier guiding people along the emergency paths. Tiny reflective markers I'd chalked at exact sight lines. A subtle overlay of my grid on the floor that mirrored the underbridge installation I was building with the city. And the photo, Claire's centerpiece, shifted under the light. The blurred faces stayed blurred, but context stopped being polite. In the upper corner of her own image, a glossy surface caught the warm spill, a small Polaroid reflection I'd recognized from Rudy's original. Embedded in Claire's print when she'd photographed her contact sheets. Under cold gallery light it read as texture. Under warm grid, it read as evidence of repetition, of staging, of a ritual, not a chance encounter. The crowd murmured, the way crowds do when they sense something more than they paid for. A critic tilted his head. A donor whispered, Is that the same coat? Another said, These are the waterfront lights the city just approved. The room wasn't seeing anonymous romance. It was seeing a map. Sophia's smile went thin. She looked at the op. He shrugged. This was in the cues. Amelia stepped a fraction closer to Edward without touching him, as if to mark the geometry again. He stopped crossing his arms. His hands needed pockets. Claire blinked at the wall, then at the floor grid, then at me. Our eyes met across the midpoint of a life. She realized. She wasn't stupid. She tracked the warm lights, the grid marks, the way the story she'd curated now intersected with a different installation, mine. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't accuse. I let the room do the math. A guest near me said, The anonymity collapses when the place is specific. Another, truth's a kind of lighting design. Someone laughed, not kindly. The spell broke, not with a crash, but with the clean sound of a cable neatly cut. Claire's hand fluttered near her necklace and found nothing to hold. She stepped to the mic. For a heartbeat, she might have rescued it with artist speak. Instead, she said, too softly for the mic to love her, This isn't, and stopped. The word hung there. Isn't what? Honest? Anonymous? Private? Sophia moved to reclaim the night, thanking sponsors. The quartet resumed something pretty and forgettable. People who love art also love leaving first. The donors migrated toward the exit in dignified confusion, murmuring about the city contract and ethics in documentary abstraction. Translation, we saw what we saw. Amelia stood beside me at last. You didn't humiliate her, she said. I told the truth where she told a story, I said. And him. She tilted her chin toward Edward, who was cornered by a board member gesturing at the projector like a broken faucet. He built compartments, I said. I built a corridor. We didn't stay. Outside. The night had that wet metal smell Seattle carries like a habit. Under the awning, Claire reached me before I reached the curb. What did you do? She asked, voice flat with the effort of not shaking. I lit the room correctly. I said. That's all. You set me up. I set up context. I corrected. You set up the rest. She searched my face for the version of me who would have softened. He didn't attend. You love the city more than you love me, she said finally. I love truth more than I love shadow, I answered. And the city, tonight, agreed. She almost said my name like a lifeline. Instead, she said, please don't ruin me. I won't, I said. But I won't let you profit from what you broke. I nodded toward the hall. Take down the piece under the bridge. Keep the others. They're good. They don't lie. Her mouth trembled, then steadied. She nodded once. The smallest surrendered. Demelia's car pulled up. She touched my elbow. Tomorrow. She asked. Tomorrow. I said. Yes, I walked away. I checked my phone. A new email from my attorney blinked. Mediation draft prepared. Ready to file at 9 a.m. I looked back through the glass one last time. Inside, the warm lights still glowed. In their honesty, the room looked less glamorous and more human. Truth had stepped over the threshold, and nothing in there could pretend not to know it anymore. The morning after the gallery felt like the city had been washed. Rain had scrubbed the sidewalks clean, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was walking through other people's lives. At 9 a.m., I sat in my attorney's office. A neat stack of papers waited for my signature. Mediation draft, property division, clauses that turned heartache into ledger entries. No fights, no theatrics. Just the math of endings. I signed, steady as steel. Claire had built a gallery of shadows. I was building an exit made of light. That evening, I returned to the bridge. Crews were finishing the permanent wiring, final lamps being bolted into place. Rudy stood near the abutment in a reflective vest 2 sizes too big, holding a broom like a flag. He grinned when he saw me. Guess I'm union now, he said. Guess you are? I answered. And for once, the words didn't feel like pity. They felt like progress. That we ran the system test at dusk. Warm light bloomed across the underpass, turning concrete ribs into gold. The river caught it and carried it downstream. Drivers above didn't even notice, but down here, the difference was everything. I watched Rudy step into the glow. He looked less like a ghost, more like a man reclaiming his place. And maybe that was the real victory. Not exposing a betrayal, not even winning a clean divorce, but proving that light, once aimed correctly, could change how a place and a life was seen. Claire moved out quietly the next week. No screaming, no last-ditch promises. Just boxes, a final glance at a house that had stopped being hers long before. Amelia texted me once. Geometry resolved. Thank you. That was all either of us needed. In my life now? Quieter, yes, but stronger. I poured myself into work, into building structures that didn't crack under pressure. And sometimes, on nights when Seattle rain paints the city in silver streaks, I walk past the bridge. The lights hum steady. No shadows hiding. No lies pretending to be beautiful. Just a city breathing honestly. And me, still standing, not broken, not bitter. Just living. So, that's how my story under the bridge ends. I exposed the truth, rebuilt my life, and left shadows behind me. Now I'll ask you, did I do the right thing? What would you have done if you were in my place? Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts. I'd love to hear your take.